This afternoon session is a very exciting one, I believe. It's regarding county board cost projections. And I am very honored to have Christy Jones from the DoD's Budget and Analytics Department. And I get to introduce Beth Bennett, who is this is the first time you've been to one of our conferences. So I want to welcome her. And she's been a budget chief at DODD, budget section chief at DODD for about 3 years. But she's getting to come in and kind of, I don't want to say fill Clay's shoes, but kind of coming in and helping Clay out as he transitions to his role. So I'm going to turn over the mic to Beth. Thank you. And can we have a big round of applause for our presenters today?
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I hear that when it's your first time at one of these conferences, you have to sing a song. So I've prepared an original piece for you all. I'm just kidding. Nobody wants that. My name is Beth Bennett. As Steve mentioned, just wanted to briefly introduce myself because I'm a new face to all of you. I have been a part of the DODD budget team for about 3 years now, managing the agency's budget. As Clay steps into his role as CFO, I will be stepping into more of the space that he was filling, tying the county board financials and waiver projections to the budget. So my goal is really to be just kind of mini Clay that's a little bit shorter and like less hairy. So obviously big shoes to fill. I have a lot to learn in this space. I really look forward to working with each of you and learning more about the work that you do. So just a little bit about myself briefly. I grew up in Springfield, so shout out to anyone here from Clark County. I moved to Columbus about 10 years ago, and since then have served in a couple different roles in both state and local government. So I was at the Office of Budget and Management. I'm a state budget girl through and through. But then also worked at the City of Columbus in the income tax division for the city auditor. So I have a special place in my heart for those of you who are providing local services, managing those stakeholders, and trying to navigate the world of any sort of tax, particularly property tax, which is so complicated and touchy. So with that, Christy has put together a really fascinating presentation. You all just did the fun work of putting in your cost projections. And so she's put together a presentation today to go through some of the high level insights that we're gathering right now on the aggregate data. Interesting things for us to kind of keep a pulse on, the overall financial health of the county boards writ large, knowing that obviously this is an aggregate story and it's made up of your 88 different unique situations. So she's going to go through that. She's going to do a little bit of a demo for the dashboard that they will be published on so that you can get a look at that. We are hopeful that that's a tool, not just for the public to consume this information in a more helpful way. Most of us are spreadsheet people, and we live in the world of not spreadsheet people. So I think it'll be a tool for the public, but also for you all to have a good way to visualize the data and share that with your stakeholders as well. She'll go through some of the common things that she's seeing as she's doing desk reviews, places where we maybe need to add some clarification around what we're asking you to do. And then as time permits, she'll also just talk about some general helpful tips and resources that are out there. So with that, I will turn it over to Christy.
Thank you. It's good to be here. It's been a while since I've been at one of these conferences. So those of you that don't know me, I'm Christy Jones, work at DODD. I've been back with the department at central office since 2018. Like Scott, I once worked at a developmental center in the business office as well. I've been with the state for 25 years in mostly fiscal capacity of all sorts. I've had my finger in literally everything fiscally related with the state. And since 2018, I came back to central office DODD and worked on cost reports. And since 2020, I've moved over since Neil has left our department and went to Cincinnati. I've filled his role again as cost projections and waiver match. Pretty much the county board person in the fiscal section. So guess we should have had that up. So this is the 5th year, actually, before I get started. As far as questions go, I would like to stop between every section and ask questions because I am going to be jumping topics. A little hesitant to do that because I don't think I got the memo on, I did get the memo, I just didn't listen. I have 30 slides, so I need to try to get through these in 1 hour less than. So I think we'll just play it by ear. Quick questions I'll take if you want to stop. Other than that, let's save them till the end. Hopefully we have some time. Okay, so this is the 5th year of submitting cost projections. It's been really interesting to see the different trends. Now we're able to see the projections and the actuals and compare them since 2020 and forward. So the focus today is going to be the majority of what I want to talk about today is just to share with you what we see on our end when the cost projections come through. So you submit your spreadsheet. What we get is a giant data file, and we can do anything with it. We can slice and dice it so many different ways. It's great to have this data. We can't share everything. There's just too much. So these are the pieces that I've selected to share with you. In aggregate, I've got averages. You'll see, we'll get there. But we're going to look at balances, revenues, expenses, waiver match, and millage. Okay, so first let's look at cash balances. I think this flows in very nicely with your presentation, Tyler. So we started out calendar year 23 with 1.8 billion in operating. These are operating cash balances only. Brought in revenues of 1.6 approximately in revenues, 1.5 billion in expenses, and we ended with about 1.9 billion in cash balance from the prior year. That's a 3.5% increase. And this is just a chart of the same thing. Here I've included operating and non-operating. And had I known what Tyler was going to say, I probably would have broke out non-operating too and showed you that independently, but I don't have that. I have your non-operating with your operating here. So we can see in 2018, we started at 1.5 billion. And in 2023, we're up to cash balance of 2.3 billion, operating only. The variance column, the third column, shows the variance between the projected and the actuals. So obviously it's great that it's positive that we're in the black, and we're tightening up, it appears. In 2020, there's a 15% variance, and by 23, we're down to 10% variance. So what can we take away from that? Probably that you're just learning from projections, and we're just tightening up, getting closer and closer to actuals. And the column on the right, we're looking at percent change in actuals. So it does look a little bit deceiving because the percentage declines, but it's in the black every time. So cash balances are increasing, but they're just increasing at a slower pace. And here's just a visual of that. So as we talk about cash balances, and I've got revenues here, expenses next. Like Beth said, this is aggregate. This is all 88 counties in total. I will share with you some averages in a few slides, but and there's average here. We've got 18 million is the average revenue county by county. I'm moving too fast. Let me take a step back. The top chart, what you're looking at is the aggregate, okay? And then we've got the variance in revenues. Again, positive variance, meaning you're projecting higher revenues than you're bringing in, which is good, expected, that conservative forecasting. And the revenues are going up slightly year by year, as we would expect to with normal economics. So the bottom section is individual county data. So the average revenues across all 88 counties is 18 million. The highest is 252, and the lowest is 551,000. What's interesting is the chart on the right. So on the right, it's very small. Those in the back might not be able to see it, but what it shows is the trend. The orange line on the right are the actuals. The blue line are the projected. So we see the natural increase from 18 to 19. We drop down in 20, go back up in 21, down in 22, back up in 23. So it's been real volatile. But what that increase in 21 is the federal revenues. So that's the benefit of having the cost report and the cost projections. We can kind of borrow data from each of them. Where we're lacking data in one, we can pull from the other. So even though you're only reporting federal revenue at a high level, I was able to go in to the cost report and look at the different types of federal revenue and verify, yes, this was all listed COVID other, and not COVID other, federal other, I'm sorry. So that's where that spike is in 21. So if we were to knock that down, there's a normal trending back up from COVID. And in 2023, we're nearly back up to pre-COVID levels, not completely. So as we look at these averages, as they come through, it just might be interesting for you to look and see, you know, where you fall, where your county falls amongst the statewide average. Same thing here. These are overall expenses. Every year in aggregate, expenses have come in lower than projection, which is good. The variance is decreasing. Average expenses are 17 million. Highest county expenses, 230 million. And the lowest county's expenses, 1.2 million. Now, if you remember, the last county, the lowest revenue was $500,000. So these are the types of things that we're looking at, and these are the benefits of having the cost projections. Is this is highlighted? Counties have an opportunity to see if they're in trouble and to act before it becomes a problem. So this is a visual of the revenues and expenses. The bottom red line are the expenses. Blue line at the top are the revenues. And the green line are the ending cash balances. So you can see, as long as there's a separation, as long as the revenues are higher than expenses, we're going to see that trend line keep going up. And it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years where we go. All of this really is, I think, going to be very interesting in the next couple of years. Okay, waiver match. So I decided to pull waiver match, highlight that, even though it's grouped in with the total expenses. I wanted to highlight that because that's the second largest expense of counties, other than personnel. It's 28% of the total expenses, waiver matches for counties. And the variance is on par with regular expenses, meaning the actuals are coming in lower than the projected. But if in the percent change year over year, we start out in 2018 with $374 million in waiver match. We drop down to 2020 at $306 million. And then in 2023, we're at $427 million. So we're now back to pre-COVID levels and above. And now, if you look at when we looked at the revenue and expense slides, there was a trend. You know, the variance is going up, the percent change is going up or down, and a pretty common trend. There's not here with waiver match. We all know that that's hard to predict. It's volatile. So that's why we put the waiver match tool in place to help with that. So, there's all kinds of things, different things going on with waiver match since 2020. I mean, we've had rate increases in the 21 biennium. We had rate increases in actually the last 3 bienniums, the 21, 22, 23, 24, right? And 24, 25. So that's factored in. We had enhanced FMAP from July of 2020 to December of 23. So in the future, we're returning to normal MAP rates again. So again, that's why the waiver match tool is there to help you predict your waiver match as best as you can. It's very comprehensive. Hopefully you've all used it in your projections. And so the slides that I don't know if these are on Member Connect now, but if they are and you have downloaded, I've changed this slide. So I decided to add the projected for the waiver match at least for these from the total of the cost projection. So it's looking to increase in 24, 10%. Again, in 25, about 9%, in 26, 3.5%. And that makes sense because our rate increases are in place for that biennium. So in 26, hopefully it starts to level out, but we'll see. It will be interesting to see. This is the projected. Let's see what the actual turns out to be. Okay, so this is where I was hoping to make it more relevant to you. So we can talk about the aggregate of total cash balances and total expenses and total revenues, but what does that mean for you? So I wanted to give you the data where you can see, well, I'm a county with 75,000, that's the average. So I've separated the counties by population group. Counties are, as you all know, are very unique, and it's hard to compare counties to counties, like Tyler was saying, and they talk about the performance audits. It's really difficult to find a county that's exactly like yours. But there's different ways you can find the most comparable counties when you're looking at, counties that provide schools, who have ICFs. You can group them by geographic area, population. Population is what we decided to go with today. And this is county population, not people served population. So there's 39 counties that are under 50,000. The top 6 are over 400,000. And I've just got the averages there for all revenues, expenses, and waiver match. I'm not going to say them all out loud. You guys all will have access to this on Member Connect, so you'll be able to see the numbers in detail. But what's interesting, I think, to me, is to look at that last column, the waiver match as a % of expenses, where it's 15% for the smaller counties, but increases 38% to the larger counties. And I'm pointing that out, but I don't necessarily know, what does that tell us? I don't know. You tell me. But I think it's interesting. And digging into those types of things are what the cost projections enable us to do. Okay, millage. So we've included millage here because I'm going to talk in a few minutes more about levies and the way levies are reported on the projection. So I wanted to look at millage here, and I think this one's pretty interesting too. So the total voted mills is on the right. We've got 474.2 voted mills in actually 2023. That 2024 is the year you submitted. And the effective mills are 286.5. That's 60% effective to voted. You'll notice that the voted mills actually increase year by year. Only one in the first year, but it's slight, but there is a slight increase. And as we're adding more voted mills, the average effective is still going down. And this is the average of all counties individually. It's not the average of the totals that you see here. So we may see some levy activity in the next few years. That's what this tells me. That's what I would expect to see. Both increase in voted mills and hopefully an increase in the average effective mills. The highs and the lows each year, 19% are the lows, 96% in 22. The other years are 100%, which is probably not accurate. But I left it there because I'm going to talk about the desk reviews in a little bit, and I want to just show you this is the data as submitted. The desk reviews are in process, so there may be a change to that one. And this just demonstrates a visual of what we just looked at, seeing that the voted mills are increasing very slightly, and the effective are continuing to decline. What we're looking at here, this is a scatter plot. There's 274 total levies across the state with both continuing and term combined. So I put this together because I wanted to see if there was a correlation with the year that the levy was passed and the effectiveness of the mill. So on the vertical axis, that's the year that it was passed, 1970 at the bottom, 2040 at the top. And then at the bottom, it ranges from 0 to 100% in 10% increments. I'm just saying that for those of you that might not be able to see it very well. So I wanted to see, is there a correlation? And it appears that there is. The older a levy is, the less effective it is. It's a vague. There is a clear pattern. Can you guys see it? It goes up. Okay, I saw that too. Good. But what's interesting are these outliers. So if you see in the bottom right near 80–90%, those are levies that were passed around 1980, and they're still bringing in around 80–90%. The outlier on the top left, it's around 18% that was passed in around 2015. That seems pretty new to be at such a low effective rate. And then you can see on the far right, we've got 1 at 100%, which we saw in the last slide, and there's 4 at 0%. I happen to know that one county is actually at 0%, but the other 3 are likely errors. So again, I wanted to show you with these, I don't want to say errors, but with these outliers, because this is part of what I'm doing in the desk review. I'm taking the data and aggregating it, doing all kinds of stuff with it, looking for outliers. So I was kind of dual jobbing here as I'm preparing for this conference. I'm also, working on the desk review in the grand scheme of things. So those levies that are outliers, I will ask about when I get to that county in the desk review. Not to say that it's wrong, but we just need to make sure, just to verify, because it could be. I mean, I reach out to counties quite often and say, hey, can you explain this to me? And the answer is, oh, sorry, that was wrong. It should have been this. So it just helps to make sure we're as accurate as possible, which is going to be even more important this year because we're publishing. So the desk reviews this year are going to be definitely more thorough than they've ever been. Okay, so I've talked about the desk reviews a little bit so far. I added a piece on that here today because I don't think that's anything that we've ever talked about when we've talked about cost projections. So I thought you guys might want to know, what am I looking for? What am I looking at when you submit your projections? So these are the types of things that I'm looking for. I look at them in 2 ways, like I've said, individually, one by one, in thorough detail, including your notes, and in aggregate. Spreadsheets are wonderful. I love spreadsheets. We've got Tableau at our fingertips now, which has also been helpful. So the scatter plot that you saw is just one thing, but there's lots of other ways that the data is sliced and diced, and that's what we're looking for. So, I see missing demographic data quite often. If you're projecting out 10 years, you need to supply FTEs and waiver counts out throughout those full years. I'm sure those are just oversights, but when we're publishing, we need to make sure that these are fully accurate. Waiver match is the only thing that I can actually verify for sure, because I know exactly what you've paid in waiver match. So I look at that. What do I know that you've paid compared to what you're reporting? We've also, Scott and I have been working together more recently too, and comparing that with the cost report. And it's pretty surprising that we see different numbers on the cost report and the cost projection. They're both reported on the calendar year cash basis, so I would expect them to be the same. So if you're reporting different numbers, maybe take a look and see what's going on, why they might be different between the two, but we are looking at that. Notes, that's a big one this year. I'm to the D's in my individual desk review, so I'm not very far, but I have had to pop in to some counties past the D's as I'm seeing outliers and things like that look weird. And I see already that there's still quite a bit of counties that don't have notes on the notes tab. It's required this year. Especially because the cost projections are being published. We want to make sure that when anybody on the outside is looking at your projections, that they have your story to go along with it. The uniqueness, if someone's looking at County A and County B and your cost per individual is sky high, yours is down here, you have the same everything appears to be the same. What's different? Well, you have the opportunity to say what's different. This happened this year. So we want to make sure that those are there. So when we say that they're required this year, I mean, it's a spreadsheet, right? It's not going to get rejected, but what that means is I'm going to email you and say, can you please add your notes? So if you haven't so far between now and whenever, if you would mind adding your notes, that would be great. It will save us both some emails. June, yeah. So Tyler asked, is there a cutoff date? And June 30th, actually, that's the date that they're going to be published. So it needs to be prior to that. I'm looking at drastic changes in trends with no explanation. If you have a note that explains why, you've got a spike in one year and down another, then great, I'm not going to bother you. But if you don't address it, I'm probably going to email and say, hey, what's going on here? Not to say that you're wrong. We just want to know. We need to know. We need to be able to explain if asked. Term levies. If you're projecting out 10 years and you have a levy that ends on year 6, but it's a term levy, assume that it's going to be renewed and bring those revenue dollars out all the way the full 10 years. If you're projecting 10 years and you don't include those levies, it's going to inaccurately make your county look very broke towards those latter years, and that's not good. Generally, straight renewals pass. I mean, we've talked about that before. It's been 20 years since one failed, a straight renewal. I'm not talking about increases or replacements, just plain renewal. So I know there may be a little hesitation. Well, what if it doesn't pass? These cost projections are based on the most likely information that you have right now. And right now, we know your renewals are likely to pass. If there's something, if there is a specific reason why you have reason to believe it won't, if something unique going on in the county, let us know and just include that in your notes. Something I'm seeing this year are those renewals where they are being added to the sheet and taken out the full 10 years or however many years you reported, but they're marked as existing, which, okay, no big deal. We know it's a renewal. We can see it's a renewal, but since we're going to be published, and I'll show you the dashboard in a little bit, it's going to give an inaccurate count. That very well could be what's going on with some of those outliers on that scatter plot, because I didn't point it out, but there were a few the scatter plot was existing levies only, and I didn't point it out at the time. I can go back, but there's a good amount of levies that are up towards 2030. So that means that it's marked as existing, but it doesn't exist yet. It still should be marked new. So if you have an existing levy, please make sure it says existing and renewals are marked as new. And then I'm also looking for outliers. I've stated that already. Okay. So in the desk, how am I doing on time? Okay. So the levies, I think this year, the levies and the notes are the two things that I'm finding so far that I've had to reach out to folks on. And I can see why there would be a little bit of confusion. This is where I've seen the biggest inconsistencies is in how the dollars are reported on the levies. So I wanted to put these slides in here to help clarify. I've got the bottom chart is a snip of the levy information tab of the cost projection. And I've got them labeled A, B, and C. I'm going to talk about each one. A being the estimated per mill yield. There's a lot of confusion about what that actually means. I've pre-populated that field with data from the Department of Taxation. We didn't lock it down because it is a report was made available in July of 23, and the next report won't be available until July of 24. But that July of 24 data that they're going to put out is based on information that county auditors are submitting spring of 24 right now. So they may have it. They may have an updated value for you. If not, please leave it, because I think what I'm seeing is that there's a little bit of confusion between the per mill yield and the actual amount that the individual levies bring in. Has nothing to do with the individual levies. Has to do with the property taxes in your county, the value of the taxable property in your county. So if you were to put 1 mill on the ballot today, what would that bring in? That's what the per mill yield is. And the data that was in there in 23, it was tax year 23, tax year 22 for 23 collection. And it is used to calculate your effective mills. So your total amount of your levies, this one has a levy of 55 million, and it has estimated per mill yield of 14 million. So 55 divided by 14 is 3.76, and that's the effective mills. I know I don't know if everyone is aware of how the millage works and how levies work. I would hope so. If not, I would encourage you to communicate with your auditors and understand that piece of it. And I have seen auditors report where some folks have sent it and said, hey, can you help me figure out what I'm supposed to put here? And that one had the estimated effective mills on it, and it actually matched what we had. So that was nice to see. The estimated total amount. This is the amount that particular levy will bring in as a whole. Meaning if it's in rollback, doesn't matter. Put the full amount of the levy there. And then we've added the rollback column, which is C. The rollback column, there's no formula there. It's not tied to anything. It's informational only. But after doing a few desk reviews, I do think I need to point out, I think there's a rollback terminology. It can be used both ways, right? You rolled back where you're getting less revenue and the dollars are distributed elsewhere, or the rollback credits, the homestead, the owner occupied, and those. And that's not what we want here. We want where you're losing revenue, not where you're gaining revenue. The rollback credits are reflected on your actual projection tab, which is the next slide. So if you have any rollback credits, we want to see those on the same line, included in the same dollars as the levy that it's applicable to. I've seen a few where where it's on its own separate line. There's no description. That's not going to be captured when we're looking at full dollars because of the way the formulas pull it in. So if you have any dollars on that levy line in the projection, there has to be a description there, which is pulled from the previous, the levy information tab. Okay, so the actual amount for 23, that's this year. You just reported actual dollars for calendar year 23. So the relationship between the way we report them is if you had any rollbacks, you would put the net amount here. This is what you actually received because the projection is your cash. So that's what you actually received in cash, not what the levy is worth. So I hope this will be helpful for you for future reference. This is just a demonstration of how it all ties together. Where I've already explained the first line, the estimated total amount divided by your per mill yield gives you your estimated effective mills. And then the next one below that, B minus C equals D. So the total amount listed on your levy tab minus any rollback is what you would report on the projection of the actual year that you're reporting on. So hopefully that helps. Okay. I'm going to switch to actually, before I do that, are there any questions so far? Any on this? None? Okay. Okay. So what I'm showing you now, this is what, I knew this was going to happen. I timed out. Give me 1 second. It's still in draft mode. It's going to be in draft mode until June 30th because there's always going to be things that we say, hey, let's put this or add that. There's still some things now that I know we want to add, but instead of nickel and diming my Tableau expert who put this together, I'm compiling them all for final revisions. But it gives some summary of the statistics. It gives in aggregate total local levy revenue. Levy revenue per individual, which is the revenue divided by all individuals served, total operating expenses, and then also per individual, same as the levy, how many FTEs, how many individuals served, voted mills, and effective mills. It's got the data there in the middle. We can see the individuals served, how many are on waivers, what type of waivers and non-waivers. If you operate a school, if you don't, right now we can see that 83 counties are privatized and 42 operate schools. And we have 182 total continuing levies and 93 term levies. What's really neat about this is all those metrics that are listed at the top are also at this drop down on the map. So you can, let's just say levies, for example, I can choose levies and then my map applies levies are applied to the map. The map is really cool as well because you can click on one county. I don't know, who should I click on? I don't know. Wood. The data at the top changes to that county only. So the bottom right, we have the opportunity, you just click outside of it to bring it back. The bottom right, we've got, again, I hate to use the word compare because of the uniqueness of the county. It's not really fair to compare. It's never going to be apples to apples, but it is grouped. We've got got them grouped by metro, large, mid-size, medium, small. That's one of the things that I'm going to add, that I have on my list to add, is what does that mean? What's that population range for each of those? But if you choose on any of those, you can see the same selected data pieces at the bottom, all counties together. Now, the meat and potatoes of it is the details. So this is where we'll see the actual projections. There's opportunity to export. This is where they'll view your notes. I don't know if there's a note here, but for personnel expenses, for example, they've got a note. The notes can also be downloaded, so they'll be able to match up with the projection. And I don't think I want to spend too much more time on that, but hopefully we are only showing 5 years. Also, FYI, we're not showing the full 10. It will just be 5 years. And it's going to be on our website right alongside the cost reports. Okay. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. Okay. I wanted to talk about data warehouse a little bit. I know I get a lot of questions on reports. What report can I run for this? What's helpful for that? I'm actually going to go down a slide. Some are aware of this, some are not. I wanted to share it for those that aren't aware. On our website, on the About Us in the data warehouse section, there's a tile for reports for business managers. If you click on that, this is a screenshot, so I'm not going to click on it, but if you were to click on that, it'll take you to a document that is actually really great. It lists the different reports that are available to you, the ones that are more, they're all available, but the ones that are more helpful for you, what the data is, where it comes from, what it tells you, what parameters you'll need for input. And on the front, it also has a nice little chart that lists the match sources of waivers. So, there's all different kinds of codes. Some may be aware, some not, but it shows the match source and then who pays, if it's a county funded waiver or a state funded waiver. Just a nice resource to have. And our data team also has office hours. So if you need any help, there's the link there. The link is on the website as well, but I posted it here. You can schedule a time with our data team. They can, anything. If you never used it before and you want to look at it for the first time, if you're an experienced user and you're running into issues, literally anything. Just know that's available to you to do that. This is just a sample of report. I'm not going through this in detail. For those that have maybe not been into data warehouse or haven't seen them, this is what they look like. I think this report is really helpful. It's a waiver funding report. It's ran by fiscal year, gives the match source, the total costs, utilization, the breakdown in costs between the state and local portion, dependent on the match source, individuals served. It's really helpful. It's kind of the whole package there. I mean, not everything, but a good amount. Any questions so far? I'm actually doing better than I thought on time.
Hold on, Lou, I'm coming.
The Zoom people have got to hear it.
So just real quick, I know at one point we were supposed to have access to Tableau. We had access and then there was a snafu and was taken away because to me, Tableau was so much easier to navigate than the data warehouse in terms of doing reports. Are we going to ever get access to Tableau again?
That's an ongoing conversation that I unfortunately don't have an answer to. Does anyone that's at DODD? I mean, it's an ongoing conversation. I know we at the department are transitioning, but I mean, I can follow up. I honestly don't know what the reality is of Tableau versus data warehouse for outside state users.
Thank you.
Apologize.
There's so many new staff around. Does Data Warehouse, are they doing any trainings? I mean, I know years ago when I came on, there was all kinds of in-person trainings.
I don't know. I'm full of answers, aren't I?
Poor Christie's getting all the IT questions.
Yeah. And that's why that's kind of also why I'm punting to the data team and sharing the office hours with you, because I myself, I mean, I can do what I need to do and I can build an ad hoc report, but that's about it. I'm not helpful with troubleshooting. But yes, I do remember those. I was in some of those live trainings when I first started back. So I can find out and follow up for sure.
I was going to say we can take that feedback back to the group too.
Okay. Yep. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Okay. Again, because there are so many new folks here, and this actually falls very in place with what you were just saying. County commissioners ask, how does waiver match work? This is how it works. We have been asked to speak at the conference in September. At that point, I want to take the opportunity to really go into this into nitty-gritty detail, and include talk about the allocation in state dollars, which I didn't include here. But this is just at the highest level. I know you guys get the invoices, you get the fifth invoice. What even is a fifth invoice? Some of you are probably wondering. So I was hoping to clear that up a little bit. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, the way we estimate your waiver match for your county. It's based on the PAWS, which are the authorization of costs for the prior fiscal year. It's got to be the prior fiscal year because PAWS runs on fiscal year. And if I ran it for the current year, there would be very little dollars. It's not accurate. So we do have to run for a full fiscal year. So that's a last completed fiscal year. We take that amount and multiply it by the match rate, whatever that is. We knock it down, assuming an 88% utilization rate. I looked at this recently. The actual utilization, I believe, is 74% statewide. But we always use 88% as a default. We've got to be on the higher end of that. And then we deduct state allocation, whatever that is for your county, and then divide that by 4, and that's your quarterly invoice amount. And those are invoiced at the first month of every quarter, July, October, January, and April. So the fifth invoice. So as I've said, at the beginning of the year, we use the prior year. So at the end of the fiscal year, we now have the full PAWS data. So we rerun it for the current fiscal year, the one that we just completed. And that's where you're going to see those people that have joined your county in the middle of the year, spans being updated. So it's very likely that you may owe more money. At this point, it's still an estimate. You know, the first 4 quarters are estimates. The fifth invoice is still an estimate. The fifth invoice is calculated the same way. We do the same thing, but then look at, okay, what was the annual amount when we use the prior fiscal year? What's the annual amount now? If there's a difference, that's what your fifth invoice is going to be. I think about half the counties even get a fifth invoice. Not every county does. And then the reconciliation is the final piece. It's 18 months after the completion of the fiscal year. We do that because providers have a year to submit claims and they have an additional 6 months to make adjustments. So that's always going to be in January, 18 months post. So this past January, we just did fiscal year 22 reconciliation, and this January we'll do 23. And it really just squares you up to actuals. So on the invoices, we're looking at estimates. Now we know it's 18 months past the fiscal year. We know the actual claims. We pull the claims reports. What match percentage do you owe and what have you paid? And you get back the difference. That's the reconciliation amount. And this is a helpful report. if you want to know what your estimated reconciliation is going to be. The path to it is at the top. It's in data warehouse, in the pause utilization folder. You'll need inputs. You'll need the match rate for that fiscal year that you're trying to estimate. The state allocation amount, which is on your backup documents that you get the state allocation listed on your 5th invoice. And I think at the beginning of the year, I send the file out with the 1st invoice. And then the waiver match paid. You are aware of what that is. And then the output is what is below. This is the actual for fiscal year 23, all counties combined. So we are looking at an estimate right now, actually today, of 45 million in reconciliation for 23. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, let me restate the question. Thank you. Are those, how are those estimates pretty close? Are they reliable? The answer is yes. Because it has all the claim data. It uses the same formula that we're going to use at the end. It pulls the claim data, and then that's why you enter your match paid. And but I mean, it always can change. Provider, you never know what providers may do. My contact information is there. We've sliced and diced this just a handful of ways. If there's any other way that you guys would be interested in seeing this data, maybe in the future, I would encourage you to let me know that. You can tell me now or send me an email. I definitely would like to know what you would be interested in, for sure. And if you don't want to wait till the next conference, if you would like some information, just send me an email. I'm happy to do it. My schedule isn't very heavy these days with meetings, so I have some pretty good availability. And then there's that report coordinator email again that Scott talked about. That goes to both cost reports and cost projections, one email. We all see them. It's nice to have couple sets of eyes on the same question. Someone might have a different viewpoint, or if someone's out, if you email me and you don't get an answer and, I might be on vacation or something. So that's why we do that, and we encourage that. Of course, you can also email me individually too, if you just want to email separate. I believe that's all I had. One more thing. So after hearing what you've heard today, if you would like to go back to your projection and make an adjustment, you are able to do that. But please let me know. That's the caveat. Please let me know that you did. So I'm not hunting around for changes. We get the data is refreshed. We get a snapshot of the data once a week. Every Monday, we get a snapshot of what it looks like. So we can always go back to previous and see what was entered. The publishing, when it's published, it will be updated monthly. And we have the option, do it live or refresh data monthly. We decided monthly because we need to be able to vet the data. Any changes that have been made, we need to make sure the notes are, we're publishing appropriate verbiage on our website. So they've got to be vetted first. So, and it will say on the bottom, data good as of, any changes after that won't be reflected. Any questions overall?
I'm going to look to our wonderful, our team. I believe the Q&A is open in the Zoom room. Is that right? So if folks are watching at home and they have a question, you can drop it in the Q&A. We don't have any there right now. So.
Okay. I can't believe it. No questions? Yes. Yes. Anytime you update, I would like you to let me know, please. Anytime after April 1st, if you update, please let me know. It'd be nice to know what you updated. I mean, you don't have to tell me, but I'm going to go look at it once I know it's updated. It'll just save me some time if you can give me a heads up on what it actually was.
So right now we're looking at a June 30th.
June 30th for publishing.
Okay.
And that's to allow the completion of the desk review.
Anybody have any questions? I think one of the things as we talk to all of our sessions today is just, we're starting to get more data. And I think one of the questions was, is this important or is it not? Or do we need to slice and dice it a different way? And I think as we start using it in the future, that might be something that we look at and say, hey, we need to have this data presented differently. For example, we show who has a school, but we don't show who has an ICF, which
Right.
might be important when you're looking and comparing, one county to the next. And what other information that might be informative can be something that can be added to the presentation later.
Yep. All right.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thanks
I
for
would.
having me.
Yep, I would like to thank Christy and Beth for attending today, and we're right on time.